All right, y'all can go away or wherever it is you go. You know, this is the only church that I speak at where the lead pastor is the bass player. I guess we're trying to find some talent somewhere. There's some, if you can't do that pastor thing too good, maybe you got a future. Don't talk back. I'm talking. And I will say this is the only church in my portfolio that advertises for margarita machines. I mean, I grew up Baptist. I got over it. And I'm making up for lost time. So, bring it. Oh, no, it's really great to be here, although I do think you're overdoing this warm welcome thing. Holy cow. Where I live, of course, the humidity's so much more, so I think I even lose weight out here just drying out. But anyway, it's only been a few months, but it just seems like forever since I was here, and it's always a thrill. I mean, this is going out, isn't it? So I can't say that this is my favorite place, but I love coming here. You folks are great. The title of today's message is, up on the screen, I think, Sabbath, Showdown in the Synagogue. That is a mouthful. That's just in case you think this is going to be boring. In fact, if you'll just keep that endless loop all the way under the entire time that I'm speaking, that will help. That's a mouthful, but the truth is, we're going to look at an episode in Jesus' ministry that's pretty power-packed, and it was a showdown, and it has some implication for us today. So let's take a look at the scripture together. It's recorded in the 3rd chapter of Mark. Another time Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with a shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Now, Jesus asked them, back to the folks who were laying the trap, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out. His hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees, that's the crowd, went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. There is so much going on in this stuff. Let me just first of all set the stage for us with the players. Because in this synagogue that day, there are 3 players that I want to call attention to. Of course, the first one is Jesus, who goes in. And what's fascinating is Jesus made it a habit of showing up in the synagogue when he was in town. Then you got this guy who is disabled, and his disablement is really crippling. Because in that day and age, if you couldn't work, if you couldn't have both hands to do whatever it was you were assigned menial tasks. This man, it's quite possible that he couldn't even support a family. So this was a person there in critical need. And then the third crew is those that are looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. They're identified later in the text as the Pharisees, and I want to tell you about that crowd. It's the crowd that ran the church. Jesus when he grew up going to the synagogue, the Pharisees were in charge. It was a political party, but it was a religious party as well, kind of like Make Pharisees Great Again merit. And so these were folks who were very against the Roman occupation of Palestine that was going on at that time. They were biblical literalists. They were law-abiding, and they created more and more laws to keep people straight. In fact, the Pharisees took the 10 Commandments and turned them into 619 commandments. That's how they had all kinds of stuff just to make sure that people were doing. If you've watched The Chosen, if any of you watched that, you see that group represented in that crowd. They literally ran the Jewish households through their religious teaching and the way. And Jesus grew up under their teaching. And I think that's really important for us to remember. Now, here's the plot. They watched him closely to see if he would heal this man on the Sabbath. Now, what's the big deal here? You got to understand that the Pharisees were looking for the Messiah. I know it's strange to imagine because there he is in front of them and they can't see him. But they were convinced that God would send his Messiah, the deliverer, once they could get enough people to behave. In other words, God was waiting on his people to straighten up, fly right. And so that's why the Pharisees kept creating commands for people, because the Sabbath was the easiest thing for them to monitor. They had all kinds of rules about the Sabbath. You couldn't carry a burden on the Sabbath. A lot of people make jokes like people with false teeth had to take them out on the Sabbath because that was carrying a burden. It was that serious. And so they were trying to, it wasn't that they were just, trying to be invasive in people's lives. They literally thought if people would just behave enough, God would send his Messiah. So that's why the Sabbath is such a big deal. And that's why when Jesus appears to just ignore or disregard Sabbath, that's why he was such a threat to them, because he was going to undo the entire religious structure that they had set up. Now, I want to talk more about religion later, but I can tell you here's a clue. God hates religion. I'll get back to that. And in fact, Jesus hates religion. I'll get back to that. And he takes religion square on. I mean, this is a showdown in the Sabbath. Now, here's how Jesus pivoted and changed the narrative for the day. So he tells this guy, stand up here in front of everybody. I mean, the guy may be hugging the wall, trying to be inconspicuous. Jesus brings him up front and center, and then he flips the table on these Pharisees who are waiting. You see, if he ignores the Sabbath, if he violates the Sabbath, we've got him. We've got good reason to have him put to death. We can harry him out. We can prove he's not a prophet, all that stuff. Now, he certainly is not the Messiah. So he flips the script on him, and he says, what's lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill? And you see, Jesus had a way, and so they remained silent. Of course, they had nowhere to go with that. I mean, he frames the question just to show how irrelevant and ridiculous religion is when it comes to pleasing God and in relationships with others. You see, religion destroys relationships. It tears people apart. It tears people away from God. And so Jesus is pointing out that goes straight to the crux of the matter, saying, let's people over institutions. Serving people over serving a bunch of rules and regulations. Being flexible to be actually helpful in the situation rather than rigid and a law keeper. Gosh, I'm telling you, is any of this resonating in our minds about how we treat one another? How we categorize one another? How we just stereotype one another and typecast and instead of the flexible, I'm here to help. What's the need? All that stuff. Back later. And so here's what Jesus says. This is a prescription. Don't you love this alliteration? I mean, this is just brilliant. All right, so alliteration is when you use the same letter and you start over and over again. Players, plot, pivot, prescription, pitiful. So Jesus looks around, play that music again. No, don't. I knew exactly the moment I said it, they were going to play it. So Jesus looked around at them and thinking, now, by the way, just be done with this meek and mild Jesus who never gets his, fur ruffled. I mean, he's angry. Now, this is proof that you can be angry. I mean, there are things to be angry, and they're not sinful. And he is really ticked off with this crowd. By the way, as far as I can remember in all of my scripture, it's the only crew he gets angry with over and over again are the religious leaders. Because they've got people in chains, they're teaching the wrong stuff, they're tearing people down, they're not building them up, they're building walls between people and God and between walls and each other. And Jesus, he is angry, and he is really ticked off in this passage. It's not the only time he's angry, but it's the only people he's angry. He doesn't get angry with people who are needing, who reckon the poor in spirit, the folks that are humble, the folks that realize they need God. No, the people that misbehave, he's not angry with. It's the people that act like they got it together and that they're in charge and that institutions trump people. Apologize for using the word trump in any setting anymore. It's been expunged from our vocabulary. Stretch out your hand. He stretched it out and is completely restored. Folks, the one thing the guy couldn't do was stretch out his hand. Jesus asked the one thing that this guy has trouble with. It's the impossible. But this is Jesus. He always goes to the crux of the matter, dealing with people. Is that a phone going off in here? Well, take it. Who knows? It might be somebody I just mentioned. So, I think that'd be cool. All right, then, Mom. Just play the music. No. This is too much fun. All right, so, because here's the thing. Mark, in the text there, indicates this was not a congenital condition. He was not born with a shriveled hand. He watched it shrivel over time. Every day, every week, every month, every year, becoming less and less usable. And Jesus goes straight to the impossible. But this is how Jesus does things. I mean, if you recall, if you're familiar with his meeting with in Sychar, Jacob's well with the woman there, and he says, "Go call your husband." You see, it's the one thing. He goes straight to the heart of the matter. She has broken relationships and she's not married, and he said, but he uses that to just say, "I can do something. I can do something for you that restores all your relationships." Or we call him the rich young ruler in another category, where he comes to Jesus and says, "I want everlasting life," and all that. And Jesus goes through, "Well, you love God? Yeah, I do that. Then go sell everything you have and give it to the poor." Now, that's not Jesus' prescription for everybody. Jesus has individual scripts for individual people, but he always gets to the heart of the issue. He sees beyond the presenting, beyond the stuff that I bring him in my prayer life. He sees straight through it. He goes straight to what's really bothering me. "Reggie, you're just afraid." Or, "Reggie, you want to control this situation." Or, "Reggie, you ought to be worried about bigger stuff than that." Or, "Why are you so anxious when I told you?" You see, in our lives, that's just the way he is loving enough to cut through all of the presenting stuff and get straight to the heart of things. So stand up here, man. Stretch out your hand. And of course, he restores it, not a little bit, completely back to primo condition. So what happens next? You've got this partnership that emerges with the Pharisees. Went out and began to plot with the Herodians. A little more text here, or context. The Pharisees, as I said, hated Roman intervention. It was a problem, and one of the reasons they were so eager for the Messiah to come, because he would throw off the Roman stuff as well as bring in the kingdom of God. The Herodians, on the other hand, they were supportive of the local king Herod, They were cozy with Rome. They coddled their position by, cooperating with the Roman authorities. So get this, look who's coming together here. You got folks who hate Rome in the political condition, people who love Rome and are benefiting from the political condition of the world, and they come together. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This would be like, I don't know, Kevin McCarthy and who's the guy from California? Who? Yeah, maybe, and coming together or something. I mean, this is like something that is so unholy, and it sets them on their path where eventually religion puts Jesus on the cross. Now, here's the deal, gang. The point for us, and several points. In fact, you were hoping we would get to a point. And as soon as I remember them, I'm going to share them with you. First point's this: flee religion. If you find yourself there's a huge difference between religion and spirituality. See, spirituality is a condition of the soul. Being spiritual is being open to God. Religion is about fear and control. It's about running other people. Okay, I take it back. I like I said, hug religion every time you can find it. Here's the thing. The reason God, when I say God hates religion, just look at the history of religion. I mean, the first murder in the Bible, right, is a religious dispute between Cain and Abel. What the offering should be like. And I think hell is probably the most religious place in the universe. Constant services and ritual and stuff like that just, keeps us busy from paying attention to the soul matters. If I can just do and check the boxes off, and pray the prayer or whatever, then I'm good to go. It doesn't matter how about that. Love your neighbor and love God. We'll get around to it. No, it is such an imposter. Even the Tower of Babel story is about, we're going to create a religion here. We'll reach heaven. See, that's what religion's always, it's about getting to God on our terms. And so God just confuses the situation. No, I don't want religion, so the Bible is full of time and time again where the call is to move beyond religion into relationship. Relationship is the key to the gospel. There is no other faith expression on the planet that focuses on relationship with God as the heart of the matter. In other expressions, you're having to behave, you're having to do certain deals to check the boxes off of certain things at certain times. You have to. This is the genius, and it is the heart of what God has done through Jesus. That's why it is so revolutionary. That's why religious people always mistrust Jesus, because he doesn't behave. And we're afraid that other people, if they get sense that same freedom, they'll run off and misbehave instead of trusting what relationship does. I mean, Kathy and I celebrated 42 years of marriage just this past week. Now, that relationship, I'll tell her you thought that was pretty impressive. On her side, if you knew Kathy, it'd be a piece of cake for me. I mean, but the thing is, the relationship that we have governs my actions. There are things I do and things I don't do because the relationship is the key that superintends our entire togetherness. I can't even imagine another way of being outside of being her husband. And so this is what God is after with every one of us. A relationship that is so strong that we just move out, we do things, and we don't do it because of the relationship, not because of the rules, not because of the regs, not because somebody else has told us you ought to do this. I mean, there's no oughta and stuff. It is a love-based, and again, this is an extraordinary part of the Christian, the message of Jesus that is not part of any other faith expression in the way that we have it. This is why it's okay to tell folks, no matter where they are in their journey, that it's okay. You're doing folks a favor to say, well, you know, I respect where you are, but give Jesus a shot. Because I really think your best shot at living your best life is for Jesus to, you know, come into relationship with him. You're doing people a favor to tell them that great news. Now, there's another point and by the way, I know none of you are struggling with religion, but you all have friends and maybe family members who are. Help them out of jail. Go after it. Not as a religious fanatic, but as out of a relationship of love. See if you can express to them the freedom of what it means. I'm telling you, gang, there's only one chance, and this is why I love coming here. I love the relationship over these years, the stuff that you're doing in the community, serving folks, loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not, you understand, this is halftime. The game's out there. This is where we, you know, come to encourage one another, but it's what we do the other, you know, on Monday morning that changes the world. And that can only be sustained through the love that you have, not a sense of obligation. And the world needs to see a group of people who will sacrifice and serve based on love. The world is desperate for it. Our country is desperate for it. Jesus is the only hope we've got, gang. And if we follow him, this is why it's critical to remember this. All right. The other point maybe does impact some of you right in the pew. This man watched his hand wither over time. Some of you may have things in your life that you have watched wither. Maybe it is a relationship that you thought, a marriage that you thought was going to be in a different place than it is now. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's your bank account. This is real stuff. Maybe it's your outlook on life, or your health, or your energy, or whatever, but your dreams, your own vision for what you could be, what you want to be. Somehow you've watched it wither. Good news for you. Jesus still comes to church. And he's here today. He's in here. And his word to you would be, stand up, front and center. Stretch out. Give me that withered, disabling, disappointing, depressing, whatever it is, give me that, because I intend to restore it completely. Now, whatever's standing in your way, Jesus will go straight to that and say, you're going to have to get rid of it. Trust it. Maybe we don't trust him. He'll go straight to that and say, trust me. I can do this. I will do this. Maybe it's we don't know him well. He'll go straight to that. Get to know me. Hang out with me a little while. Hang out with some people who hang out with me. Just watch. I don't know what the crux of your matter is, or what makes it hard for you maybe to stretch out to give him what is withering. But if I were you, and I would plead with you, you don't have to go home and leave this place with whatever it is that's shriveling on you to stay in that condition. Jesus' love for you and his desire is for you to be whole. That's what brings him to church. Now, what brings you to church?